If you had the chance to interrupt a TV or radio signal to spread your own message to thousands of people, would you? What would you say? Well, it turns out the radio and TV hackers have done this on several occasions. Some were just pranks, others were politically motivated messages. But the most disturbing incidents are the ones that don't seem to make a lot of sense. The most mysterious messages are the ones that still remain unsolved today. Number 10. Fake zombie warning. Daytime television is usually a standard talk shows or dramas, but viewers in Great Falls, Montana got the surprise of their life during an episode of the Steve Wilkos show entitled Teen Cheaters Take Lie Detectors. The emergency broadcasting system popped up on the screen to warn people about an impending zombie attack. A voiceover announced,
"Civil authorities in your area have reported that the bodies of the dead are rising from their graves and attacking the living. Follow the messages on screen that will be updated as information becomes available. Do not attempt to approach or apprehend these bodies as they are considered extremely dangerous."
The TV station KRTV and their parent company, Cordillera Communications, initially reported that they were not going to report it to local law enforcement because they all had a good laugh at the prank and there was no harm done. However, the FCC takes these crimes very seriously and they passed the incident along to the FBI. As far as we know, the hacker was never caught. Number 9. Vrillon, the alien overlord. In 1977, the 5 o'clock news on Southern Television in North Hampshire in the UK was interrupted by a deep static voice of an alien life form.
"This is the voice of Rilla, representative of the Ashtar Galactic Command, speaking to you. For many years you have seen us as lights in the stars."
This broadcast went on for about 6 minutes, and they went on to say that the Galactic Command had come from the Intergalactic Association to warn us about the destiny of the human race. The mysterious voice said that humans needed to get rid of their weapons and live peacefully, or horrible things would come to pass. It is believed that the signal came from the Isle of Wight, but as no one's come forward, there's not really any idea why anyone would want to pull off such an elaborate prank. Some believe that it may have been done by English members of an alien-loving cult that was known to exist in America. Number 8. The Kaluga Incident. One of the earliest known broadcast intrusions was in 1966. This was during the Cold War, so tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States were very high, leaving people on edge. At that time, pirate radio was very common, especially in smaller Russian towns. In Kaluga, a town 100 miles from Moscow, local teenagers interrupted radio transmissions to spit out curse words or speak against the government. Local authorities tended to feel that it was all in good fun and they let it slide with a sort of boys will be boys attitude. The fact that they never got in trouble for their immaturity gave the teens a false sense of confidence that they had outsmarted the authorities. One day they went a step too far though. An unnamed 18-year-old prankster interrupted jazz music to falsely report that the United States had sent nuclear warheads to the USSR and they all needed to take shelter, which obviously sent the town into a very real panic. According to newspaper reports, he was caught and his equipment was confiscated, but we can't help but wonder if he received a visit from the KGB for added emphasis. Number 7. Max Headroom Hack. In November of 1987, a video of a man wearing a plastic mask of the character Max Headroom interrupted the evening news on WGN Chicago. Employees were able to quickly get it off the air. After failing this first attempt, the hacker tried again with another local station, WTTW, during an episode of Doctor Who. This time, they succeeded, and viewers saw the video of a man they call the Max Headroom Hacker. There was no coherent message that anyone could interpret. The character spoke in riddles and hummed songs that viewers would later identify. He did vulgar things like hold up a dildo and expose his rear end so a woman dressed in a costume could slap him. At least one or more people were helping him make the video, but they've never been caught. While there are several theories as to who the hacker may have been, they all involve teenagers, so none of them actually make much sense. In order to pull this off, the hacker would have had to have equipment that was equal to or more powerful than the signal of the TV station. This means that someone either broke into a TV station to play the tape, or it could have been done by disgruntled employees. But who would go through so much trouble and risk arrest just to do a prank? It's very possible that there's more to the message, and we simply don't understand it. Number 6. Israeli hack. In 2016, Channel 2 in Israel was playing an episode of Big Brother when it was interrupted by a hacker from the Palestinian terror group Hamas. The message showed images of dead bodies and funerals. It went over every single instance where an Israelite had killed a Palestinian and told Israelites to leave the country or there would be a reign of terror over them. The hack, obviously, was no joke. All of this is very real. The war between Israel and Palestine has been going on for years, and as modern technology advances, it's not surprising that hackers would move on with those tactics as part of the battle. Number 5. The Playboy Block. Lust is one of the 7 deadly sins, so it only makes sense that hardcore Christians would be against the Playboy channel. In 1987, an employee of the Christian broadcast network named Thomas Haney decided to interrupt adult content stations with biblical verses. One of the messages was typed out in block letters. "Thus saith the Lord thy God, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Repent. The kingdom of God is at hand." He did this 3 times. When the FCC sent him to court, he was given 3 years of probation, 150 hours of community service, and he had to pay a $1,000 fine. Number 4. The Captain Midnite broadcast. In the 1980s, anyone who installed a satellite dish on their roof could pick up HBO for free, in addition to extra channels that they may not have otherwise got with their basic cable package. 25-year-old Florida resident John McDougall had a satellite dish business, and the majority of his customers came from people looking to get HBO. In 1986, HBO began to scramble their satellite signal and demanded $12.95 a month to watch their content. This meant McDougall's dish business would soon go bankrupt. McDougall owned a 30-foot industrial-grade satellite in front of his store, so he essentially had his own TV station. He gave himself the superhero nickname Captain Midnite. Instead of using his powers for good, though, he essentially did the equivalent of an angry YouTube comment about the situation. He interrupted the HBO signal just to spread his message, which was, "Good evening, HBO, from Captain Midnite. $12.95 a month? No way. Showtime, movie channel, beware." The message stayed on the air for 4 minutes straight before the network was able to remove it. Hellfire rained down on the employees at HBO for having a vulnerable satellite signal, and the Hughes Corporation even threatened to shut down the network if they could not find the man responsible for the hack. They feared that someone had gotten control over their station. In the media, HBO called Captain Midnite a domestic terrorist, and the FCC threatened to fine the culprit $100,000 if he did not appear in court. The FBI found McDougall and arrested him. The judge reduced his sentence to a $5,000 fine. Years later, McDougall says that he doesn't regret the hack because he still believes the corporation was overcharging their customers. Number 3. The Handy Manny Incident. In 2007, someone hacked a children's TV show playing on the Disney Channel at 9:30 a.m. in Middletown, New Jersey, called Handy Manny, and inserted a video clip with pornography. The transmission came from an employee at the local Comcast television facility. Comcast released a public statement saying that they were having an internal meeting to investigate the issue, but there was never any follow-up letting the press know if they ever identified the person who slipped in the video. According to one person who called in about the incident, his 5-year-old son was upset, but not because of the images he saw on the screen. When the father quickly turned off the television set, the boy thought that it meant he was in trouble, but he couldn't understand what he did wrong. Hopefully those kids won't end up in therapy down the line. Number 2. The Area 51 caller. In 1997, a DJ named Art Bell ran a radio show, Coast to Coast AM. This specialized in news related to claims of paranormal phenomenon. At around 1 a.m., he received a phone call live on the air from someone claiming to be a former employee at Area 51. The man sounded scared and in a panic, as if he needed to tell the truth to the public before it was too late. He says that he had been on the run across the country because extra-dimensional beings have infiltrated NASA and Area 51, and that the aliens are planning to create disasters in major cities in order to have more control over the human population. Listening back to the recording of the phone call, the man sounds genuinely scared. About 3 minutes into their conversation, something interrupts the radio transmission. The phone call begins to break up, and there was total silence for several seconds. When Art Bell came back on the air, he claimed that their equipment had suddenly had a massive heart attack and their show had to go to a backup system. If the caller was lying, he is a very talented actor, and Coast to Coast AM would have had to be in on it. Then, of course, if you believe in aliens, there is always the possibility that it could be real. And there has still never been anyone who claimed responsibility for the call. Number 1. The War of the Worlds. On the night before Halloween in 1938, a New York radio station called the Columbia Broadcasting System, which eventually became CBS, played out an hour-long drama called War of the Worlds, based on the novel by H.G. Wells. The radio play was written by Orson Welles, who would later go on to become the famous director of Citizen Kane. The drama plays out like a typical radio broadcast. Music is interrupted with news that explosions have been seen on the surface of Mars. It cuts back to the music again and continues to go back and forth with reports of a UFO landing in Grover's Mill, New Jersey. For anyone who tuned in at any time after the initial introduction, many people believed that this was actually true. According to the New York Times, hundreds of people called the police and there were traffic jams of people trying to evacuate the East Coast. However, according to an investigation by Snopes, they believe that many of the stories in the media were exaggerated and that very few people who were listening to the show actually believed that it was real. Either way, War of the Worlds is still remembered today as being one of the greatest radio pranks of all time. Today there is a monument to the real-life location of the fictional Martian landing site located in New Jersey. So I really hope you found that video interesting. If you did, as always, give us a like below and don't forget to subscribe for brand new videos just like this every day. And if you're looking for something else to watch, we got more videos from this channel, of course, but also from my other channel, Biographics. I'll link to that on the screen as well as the subscribe button, so go over and check it out. And as always, thank you for watching.